G'day. I want to talk today about the relationship counselling I do, and particularly the program I've designed, which is a kind of counselling and coaching program centered around 8 weeks, where you learn the fundamental principles of how to kind of function and operate as a man in a relationship to make the relationship go really well. And the reason that I focus on this is because men and women are different. You know, we're all human beings, but at a psychological level, we're different in the sense that we've got different emotional triggers, sometimes very conscious ones, but often very kind of deep, unconscious sort of programming. It's a kind of like a psychological programming in us that's the consequence of evolution. So we've got these different triggers for feeling attracted, for feeling rejected, for feeling happy, and so on in relationship to one another. And this is why a man will often behave in ways that make sense to him, that seem obvious and helpful, but that will make his partner unhappy. And it's also in reverse, while she'll do the same. And of course the great problem here is that these lead to clashes, and they lead to arguments, and they lead to unhappiness in relationship and to separation and divorce. But the beautiful thing about this is that it doesn't have to be like that at all, because we're talking about these differences here, and the differences between men and women are fundamentally complementary. You know, we don't need a gender war. If we can understand properly the differences between us and know how to work with them, then what we find is that they're fundamentally complementary. And so getting back to that sort of way of being in a relationship where our differences really help ourselves and each other flourish and make the relationship great. So yeah, when you know how to read these differences, read the psychological structure of yourself, your masculine psychology, and read and understand her feminine psychology, then when you've got that skill and you act based on that, then you can really make your own relationship great. And that's fundamentally what this course is about. It's really about, it's a very practical course. It's about, understanding these differences, but then those 8 weeks that I talk about are essentially a program of learning how to put them into practice and how to embody this wisdom in your relationship. And the beauty of this is that as I'm often saying to guys, a relationship like dating and all these other areas of life, career, a relationship is essentially a personal growth machine. So the fundamental thing about this course is that you're learning to be your best self. And not just your best self in some narrow moralistic way, like be a good boy, you're a bad man, try and be a decent guy. It's not like that at all. It's being your best self in the sense of you're strongest and you're happy, you're happiest. And that's as a man, but that's also you as an individual man. So I'm not going to be telling you how to think or what values to hold. You can work that out for yourself. You don't need me. But I'll help you to do that. I'll help you to work that out for yourself and then put it into practice across these fundamentals that I'll be talking about, these 8 fundamentals. So yeah, this is a personal growth machine. It's about you becoming really strong and happy and self-respecting in yourself and bringing that into the relationship, because that's what makes a relationship great. So what we do is we start off not with the 8 weeks first, but we do an introductory session, and that can be the normal 50-minute session, or you can book a 90-minute session, and that's probably ideal. And what we'll do is we'll really go over the big picture of your situation, your problems, your goals, what you want from this, what you need out of this course, which is to say what you need to be different in your relationship and what you need to be different in yourself. We'll gain a big picture of that, a kind of assessment of the problems, the goals, where you want to get and how to get there, and then also how this course will help you to get there. So fundamentally it's a combination, as I say, of counselling and coaching, because you've got these 8 weeks that we'll do where I lead you through and sort of teach you these practices, and I also teach you the fundamental sort of psychology of men, the intersexual psychology of men and women. So I'm giving you a lot of information and I'm guiding you, and that's a kind of coaching practice, but it's also a counselling practice because it's about you in particular. This is tailored to you, and it's about getting insight into yourself and sort of doing all this work in a way that works for you, your way of being, your partner's way of being, your context, your relationship. So week 1 is step into your strength. and a big part of that is what I'm going to call absolutes. So your absolutes are your non-negotiable values, your non-negotiable principles, your terms, your conditions, as it were, about that define you as a man, define you as a person, define you as a man. These things that are your identity at the level of values and what you stand for and how you operate in the world. And we're talking specifically about the things that you shouldn't compromise on. So I'm calling them absolutes. And then the second week I call express but don't defend your feelings. So what this is about is that when you try to defend your feelings, when you try to justify your feelings, when you try to argue for your feelings, well, one thing that happens is that you end up in an argument with your partner. But more fundamentally than that, the root of that is that you're not solid in how you feel. Now, a lot of guys aren't solid in how they feel because they want to please their partner. We've got this people-pleasing boy inside us, all of us. When you defend your feelings, you're coming from the little boy who's pleading with mummy, pleading with the world to understand me and approve of me. My feelings are valid if you approve of them. This is about stepping totally out of that. My feelings, my gut sense of things, my embodied feelings, they're real and they're not negotiable. I'm not going to erase them or stuff them down. Now, I'm not going to be a dogmatist. I know I can get things wrong, but I do feel what I feel, and fundamentally, in the main, that stuff's reliable. A woman feels secure. She feels connected when you're really solid in your feelings and your emotions and you can express them clearly. That makes her feel secure and it's attractive to her. Because women are security-seeking creatures at this deep unconscious psychological level. That's an old evolved thing that they have. So when you're fundamentally strong in your feelings, you become strong in yourself and she feels strong, attracted, sort of happy in the relationship. So you've got to stop defending your feelings, and we'll be putting that into practice and learning how to put that into practice in that second week. Now, the third week is fundamentally about standing by your absolutes, but then cooperating. Standing by your principles, but then cooperate. So this is the thing where, maybe you have a fundamental principle that I catch up with my mates once a week. Male relationships are very important to me, and I've experienced in the past female partners who have tried to end my male friendships or control my male friendships, and that's not okay, because I'm not in a people-pleasing mode here. These are important to me, and that's the justification for them. That's all that they need for a justification. So it's important to me to spend time with my mates. That's a fundamental absolute. But that typically happens on a Tuesday night, but she, on this particular Tuesday night, she wants to catch up with her girlfriend's, partner and wants you to come along and all have dinner together. Maybe you can go, all right, well, I won't be able to catch up with my mates on Tuesday night, but Saturday morning I'm going to, arrange something with them. So you find to look after the kids or, whatever. It's about being able to negotiate around these principles. It's not like, no, Tuesday night's my, the guy's night. That's it, too bad. Week 4 is romancing and sexing. So this, my work in general is, one part of it is evolutionary psychology. It's understanding that, we are evolved animals. And that's why I say male and female psychology is different, because it is by observation. Counselling work, you see this, absolutely. But men and women have evolved different sort of strategies and different emotional triggers with slightly different ends, with slightly different goals in mind that actually happen to converge. What's evolution about? Replication, having kids, having sex and having kids, and survival. And so, we have different sort of programming in our psychology. Women have evolved to be turned on by men taking leadership in certain things. And men have evolved to take leadership in certain things and to feel good when they do it, and to kind of feel depressed and passive when they're not taking that leadership. And that's especially around a lot of aspects of romance and sex. There's a kind of guiding and leading and taking charge of this stuff that really works for 80% of women. So understanding how to do that in your relationship, because this is about turning on the passion in your relationship, turning on the passion in the bedroom, but also just turning on the passion more generally. So she feels really valued, and she feels your strength, and she feels your commitment to her, and she feels your strength in the world. Okay, so week 5 is Be the Rock. And what that's about fundamentally is that, again, a difference between men and women is that women are more embedded in their emotions. So men and women are both rational creatures, and men and women are both very capable of being deeply irrational. But given that context, and given that we all have power and we all have rationality, we also have kind of differences in our psyche about how that's played out. And for women, their way of being is more embedded in their emotions. So they think through their emotions and they interpret the world more through their emotional space at that time. Which again, some people use that to demean women. It's not the case at all. We all actually interpret the world through moods and emotions. If you're in a state of despair, the world looks a certain way to you. If you're in a state of courage, the world looks different to you. So women are more fundamentally in their moods and emotions in the way they interpret the world. And of course this means that when they sort of go into their shadow side, when they go into their excess, that means that they become more storm-like in their emotions. Men, on the other hand, are obviously emotional creatures too and think through their emotions, but there's more of an emphasis in male psychology on a kind of deductive, practical, problem-solving mode of being. Because you can see the woman is the nurturer, and she nurtures the children, she nurtures the man, she nurtures the tribe through our evolution. She provides that thing that we so fundamentally need. Men provide the thing that she and the rest of us so fundamentally need when we have this practical sort of stepping out there, hunting, expanding the borders of the territory, making things safe, making sure that we've got water and that the other tribe doesn't stop us from accessing the water. We'll throw a spear at them. We've got this kind of nature where we sort of expand in this kind of problem-solving way. So being the rock is about being in a very strong way in your deductive mode, in your problem-solving stable mode. Because I spoke about a woman's excess, she becomes stormy. An extreme example would be borderline personality disorder. A man can go into excesses here. I guess a more benign example would be autism. Another example is a kind of rigidity and judgmentalism. So being in a really healthy way, the rock in the relationship, knowing how to be in a way that's not contradictory of the feminine, that doesn't cut her out, but is complementary to the feminine in her emotional way of being. Being the rock, being solid for her so that her tides can come and go and her storms can come and go, her weather patterns, and she's got that solidity with you. So it's kind of like the rock in the ocean. It's a bit like you're the rock and she's the ocean, and so knowing how to have that stability for her. All right, so week 6, I love this one, I love the title of it, Don't Argue. Sounds pretty good, huh? And it's real. You can learn how to not argue, and you can learn how to stop arguments in your relationship. Now, you're probably trying to do this, but what you're doing is you're avoiding arguments, and that's making things worse. But you don't have to choose between avoiding arguments or stepping into arguments. There's a third, far healthier way of being, and it's a very masculine way of being. How you refuse to argue, and instead you really listen, but you also assert your boundaries. So you come from your point of strength to her, but it's a point of strength where you're really listening to her and taking into account what she's saying. And that leads us to week 7, which is skillful listening. So learning how to really listen, and how to really listen not like a girlfriend, which is exhausting for you as a guy. You just internally you shut down. She's sort of blah 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 at you for hours, and you're just shutting down and getting tired of it, and then she gets angry at you for shutting down, but I mean, what were you going to do? It's learning how to listen really skillfully, but in a masculine way. You don't have to listen like a girlfriend. And you can make that clear to her so that she can also learn how to express herself and share what she needs to say in a way that can be heard. Because you know how you can hear, and you're also taking responsibility for communicating that to her. So again, that this becomes complementary, that she can be heard by you and you can really hear in a way that actually works really well between the pair of you, and in a way that won't leave you exhausted, that won't, you won't be stuck for hours in these sorts of situations you probably are in now. Okay, and week 6 is develop strong bonds with other men. So part of the reason I'm a men's counsellor, and part of the reason that's powerful, is because Men need other men who have the wisdom, and I'm not blowing my own trumpet, but of course, I've spoken to thousands of men in my time as a counsellor, and I've learned a hell of a lot, as well as I've done a shitload of reading, and I've done a hell of a lot of my own work. I've got my own counsellor. I've had that for years because I do my own personal growth, my own personal work as a man, looking at all the facets of my life and, developing more wisdom about them and developing more courage and pushing forward in them. And so, I'm a big part of this is men's counselling, in the sense that it's counselling but with a man. But the other aspect that's really fundamentally important is, I'm not enough for you. You need male friends who are really solid in your life, and especially male friends who are wise, who are healthy in their masculinity, so you can really rub shoulders with that aspect of each other. A lot of guys try to deal with problems in their relationship by communication with their woman. That's a 1960s ideal from the sensitive new age guy, and it doesn't work, and it often makes things worse. Communication is really important, but we do too much communication, and that's partly the little boy trying to be heard. And that's also partly our just lack of skillfulness, partly not knowing what to do. And this course is about learning really what to do. You take a lot of your problems, you should take a lot of your problems to other men. Problems in your relationship you should take to the men. They'll give you the wisdom to know how to deal with this as a man, not as a little boy, not as a people-pleasing guy, not as a sensitive new age guy with no backbone, the stuff that doesn't work. Healthy, wise men will be able to hear you properly and help you to sort of work out what to do and how to be. And then you come back to your woman and you come back from that strong place, because she can't guide you in being a man. Other men will guide you in that. Okay, so that's essentially it. So we start off with an assessment week. We can do a session after that with you and your partner if you want. We don't have to, but if you want to bring your partner in, we can certainly do a session with her as well. By the way, I use the word her because I'm focused on heterosexual men. I'm focused on male and female relationships. This stuff actually does work for a lot of gay guys, and I've had a number of gay couples as clients and so on, so it'll work for them. But I'm a heterosexual man, and my interest is really strongly in heterosexual relationships. But yeah, you can bring your partner in if you want, for a week, but then we step in just you and I across these 8 weeks. And of course, what's going to happen here is, if you really do this work, you are really going to transform by the end of it, and your relationship is really going to have transformed by the end of this. And this is something that you can just keep building on for years. Okay, so the next video will focus on this point around your absolutes. We'll talk about how you clarify your absolutes and how you, what it is to clarify your absolutes, and then some ideas about how to do that. And that's really a video that you'll watch before you see me for the next session, where we go over your absolutes and get clear on them. And then, following that, we'll get stuck into these 8 weeks. And so the third video will begin with the first week. All right, see you soon.